What is that secret sauce that you can give somebody? Like if somebody's starting out an entrepreneurial game or they're in it and they're struggling, what is your piece of motivation or your advice for them?
Here's what you should do. There's somebody who is doing what you're doing as an entrepreneur, but is 3 years, 5 years, 10 years ahead of you. And I've always found this, the most successful people are usually the most approachable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So go and talk to that person, interview that person, take them to lunch, take them to dinner, spend time with them, send them a thank you card ahead of time, but listen to them because they'll tell you the true roadblocks and pitfalls and things to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to them and then stop listening to your friends and your family who have never done it.
Yes.
One of my advisors and mentors, Greg Reed, who's the author of Think and Grow Rich, 3 Feet from Gold, and a bunch of other books. Producer for the Wish Man, which is the story about the Make-A-Wish Foundation. He taught me early on to seek counsel instead of advice. Everybody has advice, but they don't have the experience to really give you true, valuable counsel to help you along on your journey. So that's tough sometimes because our closest friends and family members want to protect us. And so that's why they may give us bad advice because they've never done it. And don't believe that you could do it because they themselves have fears and tribulations that they can't overcome. So go out, seek counsel, not advice. Talk to somebody who's a few years ahead of you. Most of the time, they're glad to advise you. If they're not, then it's the wrong person to look for. Mm-hmm. But seek out somebody who's where you want to be and ask them, not somebody who's sitting next to you on the couch.
I love it. But if you can give any advice to any entrepreneur that is sitting on a fence, or any person sitting on the fence that wants to be an entrepreneur, what is that one piece of advice that you'll give somebody?
The one piece of advice I would give would be to focus and pick one thing that you really have your heart in, and stick to that one thing until you master it. And this is something, with my first year with my manufacturer that I work with, and I've made $1 million in sales, I've been asked the question, well, you only work with one, well, I had $1 million in sales. That's not too shabby. But, there are plenty of other people that do way more than I do. So, I'm not trying to say that I think I'm great. I know I actually have met people that do 20 million a year. So, I'm a small fish in the pond compared to some of these other sellers. But for me, I am loving every minute of it because I had no idea just 1 year ago that I would be able to say that. And I wouldn't even believe it if it didn't happen to me personally. And I, can see the results myself. But whether it's Shopify, whether it's Amazon, whether it's doing ClickFunnels, whether it's affiliate marketing, whatever it is, because this is a mistake I've made. I've tried to do it all and I didn't do any of it well.
So like I said, my audience is for people that are starting out or they're struggling in the game. Now, for the people that are thinking about starting out and they're sitting on the fence and like, oh, I want to take this step, but I'm scared. What would your advice be?
I would say to sit with the fear, meaning don't act like you're not being afraid. I think it's one of the biggest banes of society and humanity right now is to act like we're not experiencing an emotion. Yes. I'll just say, I have a 3-step little process that I do every time I go on stage because I get scared still. Yeah. I get nervous.
Yes.
I don't get scared. I get a little anxiety. I'm like, oh my gosh, what if I trip? Like at Funnel Hacking Live, I always get nervous.
Yeah.
So number one, I am a human with human emotions. So if I'm feeling a feeling, I want to feel the feeling. That's actually step one. That's what I call it. Step one, feel the feeling. Mm-hmm. Now, what I say that is, if I'm feeling fear, I actually want to look at it and confront and feel fear to the fullest extent. I want to feel the most afraid I've ever felt. And it's going to sound weird, but it's the truth. If I'm feeling anxiety, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to experience anxiety. I actually want to have anxiety. Happiness, let me feel the full weight and the full extent of what it means to be happy in my life. This is my own process. This is not anywhere else. So just so y'all know, this is a Stephen doctrine here. All right. This is not doesn't come from anywhere, but this is how I handle it. Cause I still get freaked out. Anyway, so number one, I feel the feeling, but then number two, I recognize that I'm not my feeling. This is a very key thing to understand. I'm not fear. I'm experiencing fear. I'm not anxiety. I'm experiencing anxiety. And so what that does is after I've taken a moment to feel whatever's going on in my life, I take a moment to become, this is a quote from Tony Robbins, "We are not our feelings." I take a moment to separate myself from the emotion and look at it and be like, okay, this is me experiencing that thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually sets me up for step number 3, which is micro steps. I have to have micro wins. Mm-hmm. So I just start coming up with small things I could do to just start moving me towards the goal. My entire company has been built by me only doing 3 things every day.
Yes.
That's it. Otherwise, I'm going to die. It's too much stuff.
You can't. So, yeah. And there's no such thing as a to-do list. It's called a success list. And it's 2 to 3 things. And that's what I teach my students as well. I'll just like, you can't do it. It's just too hard.
You can't do it.
Yeah.
My morning stand-up meeting every day that I have with my team, I just like, they all have 3 things they're doing. I'm doing my 3 things. And under that principle, we've built everything. It's like, otherwise you will die at your desk, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's how successful companies are built, because you're focusing on the right things as well.
Yeah.
The green dots,
absolutely.
Which I learned from you.
Yeah.
If you can give any advice to somebody starting out their journey, but they're really struggling to make that decision, what would you advise them?
So what I would do is the journey, because I've been through it myself, is there's a lot of stuff bombarding you when you come online. There's a ton of stuff. The thing is, don't look to do things on the cheap and just do what you think is right. Invest the time, effort, if you have to invest money. And a lot of times people don't, and here's the other thing, people sometimes tell me, well, I would love to do that, but I just don't have the money. So again, you have to ask yourself, where's that coming from? Like if I told that, so if someone tells me they don't have any money and I tell them, well, do you want a check for $50,000? And they go, yeah, oh yeah. Well, I'll give you a check for $50,000 in 3 days if you go out and give me 10,000. If you give me 10,000, I'll give you 50,000. Well, if they know they're going to get 50 grand, they'll do whatever they got to do to go get 10 grand. So when people tell me they don't have money, it just basically tells me that they're not thinking the way entrepreneurs do. The other thing is, you don't have to go out and get loans and all that other stuff. I mean, go get a part-time job, go do something else, go, become a tutor, do, whatever you have to do. What I'm saying is, if you truly want to become successful, you don't quit, which is one of the biggest things. Don't make excuses. Don't go on the cheap because you think, hey, I'm going to go to YouTube and learn everything. Get a mentor. Mentors are really good people that have been there and done that. It's going to help you immensely. Like if I had to do everything all over again, I would have got a mentor a long time ago. Because even though I was making 6 figures offline, I was working 18-hour days, not seeing my family. And I figured things out a little bit on my own, but I could have circumvented a lot of that if I just, got some help. So the main thing is, don't quit. Don't go cheap just because you think that's the only way to go. If you have to go get a part-time job to get some money for paid ads or whatever you want to do to get a mentor, do that. But write down what you want, write your goal down, and then don't make excuses until you get there. Just tell yourself, I'm going to get there. I'm going to figure out a way to do it. As long as it's legal, moral, ethical, I'm going to find a way to get it done, not get excuses. And that in itself is going to help people immensely because it's a mindset thing. The mind really is the reason people are going to get there or not.
Okay, so Fabian, I always ask this question at the end of my podcast episode. So if you have any advice for anybody that is just starting out, they're struggling, they're just not getting into the groove of things, what would that piece of advice be?
To slow down. So counterintuitive, but slowing down will give you, and sometimes we're very scared of our own thoughts, which is why mindfulness is so hard for many people to practice. Because you feel like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to discover, and I don't like my thoughts. But when you slow down and you can come at it from compassion for your own self, because you are where you are right now, you're not going to be there forever. See, the only permanent thing in life is change. So you're going to change anyway. So might as well give yourself some room to breathe and see, what do you want? What are you here for? What's my purpose in life? Like go high level thinking and then break it down into what needs to happen right now.
So true. I love that. Well, more of a little bit of a statement. If you met somebody and this person is like, oh, I don't know if I want to become an entrepreneur, what is your advice for me to become an entrepreneur? What would you say to this person?
Well, part of it would be to ask them what their story is, because I believe everyone has a story at their core, something that motivates them. And from there, if it's something that drives them, then yes, I would certainly encourage them. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, we get started late because there's that fear factor. But once we get started, it's like, I know for me personally, and for so many people I've mentored, it's like, why didn't I do this earlier? And it's because we're afraid. But when someone can sit down with you and listen to your story and help you see, like, you have a gift, a mission, and let's bring that into the world and share it. So yeah, it's about listening.
Now, one last question statement type thing. If you can have one piece of advice that you will give up and startup entrepreneurs, what would that piece of advice be? Because sometimes, you start out this journey and it's really hard, because as an entrepreneur, you think you just jump in and it's easy, and it's not easy. So what is that one piece of advice that you will give somebody that's just starting out in this game?
I would say find as much information as you can and consume it as fast as possible. Everything that we're working on online, if you have an online business or a local business or something like that, it comes down to finding the ways that you can exploit a way of doing something. And the only way you're going to find those, you can either experiment and do it by trial and error, or you can just start consuming content as fast as possible and trying to test things as fast as possible. But the best way you can do that is by learning from other people's mistakes rather than going through a bunch of mistakes yourself. So I read a ton of books, I read a ton of blogs, I watch a ton of interviews on YouTube with people, I listen to podcasts all the time. And that's been a huge factor for me, is because when you learn it from somebody else, like, you may not get the pain of failing or like screwing something up, but you still get the information. Like, you still understand that, like, okay, if you do these 3 things, that usually equals this. And that's a much faster and more logical way of going about doing things, rather than putting yourself through all this pain, because that's like the noble thing to do, or like, the thing that everybody in movies says that they did and stuff like that. Yeah. And so I would say just start consuming content faster and consuming information faster, and just relentlessly seek answers that are revolving around the problems that you're trying to solve personally. So if you're working on like your finances, like if you can't figure out how to get out of credit card debt, if you're trying to figure out how to set up like a Facebook ad campaign or do like a YouTube video sales letter or something like that, like just start typing stuff into Google and search as many things as you can possibly think of. And like answers will just start to present themselves. And so I would say that's the biggest piece of advice, because there's so much information out there, and there's so many people that are offering their experience for free. Like you, for example, like you're doing this podcast and people listen to it and like they learn from your mistakes. And like, that's so insane, because if like the alternative is you sit down and read books, and I enjoy reading books too, but like there's so many different types of content and information that there's no excuse to not be constantly trying to better understand things and learn things.
Yeah. If somebody's sitting on the fence and they're thinking of starting a business, but they're not sure if they can do it because they've got that imposter syndrome or whatever is going on with them, what advice would you give them?
Just do it. Like, at the end of the day, like, you want to do it for a reason, and not doing anything, standing in your exact place in life is just going to get you staying there. And that's where I was for about 4 years. And the only things that were growing in my life was unhappiness and my debt. Like, I was 30 grand in debt when I started an online business. I wasn't a wealthy man. Like, I made a decent wage for what I was doing, but having 2 kids and living in a very highly cost area, like what I made just wasn't enough. So just look at yourself in 10 years, and could you see yourself doing what you're doing now in 10 years from now? And if the answer kind of sickens you a little bit, if you get a pit in your stomach and you're like, I couldn't imagine that, nothing's going to change unless you change. You're the only person that's in control of your outcomes in life. And until you take control and stop letting the fates or whatever decide where you're going to go, you're not going where you want to be. You have control of your life and your destination.
Last question. If you have any advice for somebody sitting on the fence that wants to get into podcasting or into entrepreneurship, but they like, oh, I don't know if I can do it, I'm worried I'm going to fail, etc. What is that piece of advice that you have for somebody?
Well, it depends. If you're, what are you getting into podcasting for, right? Here's my advice. If you have a business like yourself or somebody, you have an established business, you have something and your goal is to build trust with people and become an authority, there's absolutely no reason why you wouldn't have a podcast. The whole reason you have a business is to build trust, sell products, and be authority. How else are you going to become that? You need to be seen. Being seen and being interviewed creates that. That's just the way it goes. So for me, this is why I got into podcast production too. Like, we do podcasts for people because I know the value of it. And if you have a business, it's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. But again, that's why I say if you have a business and you're established, if you're brand new and you're just starting, then you got to look at it realistically. Like, can you do this for I think Lewis Howes said this too. Can you do this for 3 to 5 years without making money, right? Can you do this? If the answer is yes, then you should do it, because you should be committed to at least 3 to 5 years of doing it. Exactly. You got to show up. You got to show up at least once a week consistently. Yeah. I believe, so that's the thing. If you're just starting out and you just want to have a podcast as a hobby, of course, go ahead. But what is your reason? Exactly. Like, if you're a business, there's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. There's absolutely, you should have one. But if you're just wanting to start one as a hobby, absolutely. If you're really passionate about something, but just understand that there's a certain amount of commitment and showing up for people to eventually see. People didn't really start to get interested in mine at first either. Like, people, oh yeah, he'll just probably quit. Until you start showing up and you start posting, people are like, whoa, okay, this person's serious. This isn't just a joke, right? And to put in perspective, I'm going to quote Pat Flynn. There's 500 million YouTube channels right now.
Yes.
Okay. There's only around 1 million podcasts. So put that into perspective, right? There's 500 million YouTube channels, and blogs, and there's not even 1 million podcasts. So put that in perspective. If you think that's saturated, well, look at the numbers. Yeah. There is so much room for it. And for you to just be able to get out there now is the perfect time. Not yesterday, not next week. Like, get going now, because this will help your business 100%.
Do you have any advice to people that are struggling in their business that's just not reaching that next level? What would that advice be?
Do what I did. So I was in that situation, right? I think a lot of us become in that situation at first, right? Things just aren't taking off. They're just not moving. You're wondering why everyone else is having success around you and you're not involved in that. The best piece of advice I could give you is, one, you got to be patient, right? Like, we failed for 5-6 years straight of 40 business ideas, and you got to learn to fail and you got to be okay with it. And if you don't have that experience under your belt yet, don't freak out. Like, you got to learn to be patient with it. But most importantly, on top of that, you have to learn to go build relationships with other people, not in hopes that you're gonna suck from them, right? I think a lot of people build relationships with a manipulative mindset of getting something from it. And I think that's backwards. I think you need to go build relationships with people that one day, whether it's in a week or 6 years, you never know what can happen. Some shift can change in your business. Some shift could change in theirs, where some partnership forms and it benefits both of you. So start what I call, I didn't even coin the term. I think it's Brian Tracy, maybe. I can't remember who it was. But start digging the well before you're thirsty, okay? And start going out and networking. And I know a lot of people don't like to network. Just go make friends. That's what I call it. Go make friends with other people and get to know them and start finding ways that you can help them out without any reciprocal mindset in return. Don't expect anything in return. And if you go build a new relationship, even once a week, you have 52 new relationships in 1 year. And what that can do for you or your business is something I can't even explain. But I feel like a reason that most people don't do it is because, one, it involves work, and two, it's not a short-term strategy. It's a long-term play. But you got to remember something. In business, in entrepreneurship, this isn't a sprint. This is a marathon. And if you're here, you got to have tenure. You got to be willing to put in 5, 10, 15, 30, 40 years of your vision to make it all come to fruition. So if you have that heart and you have that stomach, start building relationships right now, because it's going to come back tenfold in the future for you.
Okay, so what is the biggest advice that you can give entrepreneurs? Like, if they're starting out this journey, they're not sure if they're in the right space, they're really struggling just to get going. What would your advice be to them?
Yeah, I think two things. To touch on just your question in general, what I would say to those people who aren't really sure what they want to do or if this is right for them, I was actually just talking about this. My advice would be, and this is from my own experience, if you are not like completely obsessed with what you're doing, if your work, quote unquote work, or however you spend your time all day, every day, does not become a part of your life and who you are and what you want to wake up doing, it's probably not right. Like you need to go find that thing for you. I think a big misconception is that the entrepreneurship lifestyle and, you know, the nomad lifestyle and working from your laptop lifestyle is what is right for everyone, but it's not.
No, I
And
agree.
you have to go experience that for yourself, but you learn very quickly whether or not you are like super obsessed and passionate about it. So that would be my first piece of advice. If you do find that thing that you're obsessed with, my second piece of advice would be patient. Be patient with your goals. Be patient with where you want your company to go, how you want your life to look. Don't compare to anybody else. You're on your own journey.
Yes.
You need to decide how much money you need to make in order to live the lifestyle that you think you need to have.
Mm-hmm.
And then go and do that. And it doesn't matter if it's going to take 2 years or 20 years. You're going to get there as long as you stay committed. And I would say number one thing you need to do is just stay patient.
Yes. Because people get impatient and then they start with shiny object syndrome, which is the problem.
Yeah. And then they go do something else and it's not what they wanted to do. And then they come back to the thing that they were originally doing and then they see something else. And it's just like, just keep doing what you're doing consistently over time. Make sure you're paying your bills, of course, but consistently show up, meet new people, serve new people, show up in a space of service, and whatever you desire will come to you.
Yes. Okay, so if you can give any advice to an entrepreneur that's starting out, or you know, somebody sitting on a fence that wants to become an entrepreneur, what will your piece of advice be to this person?
You have to become completely obsessed, but you also have to have patience, because a lot of people, they just don't have the patience to see it through. They don't have any type of patience. They think everything will happen in 10 minutes. They think it's a case of setting up a website and customers will just fly through the doors. They don't understand that the amount of effort that you actually have to put in to become a master at that. And that'd be the main thing. Become obsessed and have enough patience to actually see it through. But pay attention to the financials as well and the metrics.
That's good advice. I really like the patience part, because that is very true. A lot of entrepreneurs, that's why they give up, because they're like, I'm not
really any patience, and they're jumping between things. They think the grass is always greener, and they don't put enough time and effort into an idea to actually see it through, and they could be very close to getting somewhere, and they jump off to the next shiny thing.
Do you have any advice for a new entrepreneur, or you know, that's somebody sitting on a fence thinking of becoming an entrepreneur? They're not quite sure if they want to do it because they, you know, either scared or, you know, they don't think it's for them. What advice do you have for them?
So for the person on the fence, here's a really big truth that's kind of scary, is that most entrepreneurs only jump to begin their journey through something that's a huge event. It's either something traumatic like happened to me, or it's something that's, you know, an ultimatum. And what happens is if people are comfortable, they won't make a change. And so what I would challenge you to do is, if you're on the fence right now, you know, ask yourself, is this something that you really want to do? And really take a hard look at yourself. Look at yourself in the mirror and say, am I not taking action because I'm comfortable? Comfort is the death of all progress. And if you're comfortable in life, you're going to find that it's going to be the easiest thing in the world is just to keep doing what you're doing. All the time, my friends back home when I was, you know, growing up and stuff, it would be, oh, I'll do that, I'll get to that, you know, we'll have a time for that, you know. But I'm a big believer of, you know, people say, oh, the right relationship will come around. No, it won't. Like, you have to go out and you have to make it happen, right? And it's the same for everything in life. Fitness, health, you know, business, relationships. You should approach them all the same way with that kind of outgoing mentality. So if you're on the fence right now and you think you really want to start a business, but you're on that fence, I would challenge yourself to look at yourself. Are you comfortable? And if you are, what could you do to start getting to start getting uncomfortable. Because when you're outside of your comfort zone, that's really where you start to operate in your zone of genius. And it's hard and it's going to suck. And there was moments where I was crying on the floor and I was telling my girlfriend, I don't want to do this. This is horrible. Like physically like screaming into a pillow because I was so overwhelmed and so stressed from not having that money. But that horrible pressure helped me to build this kind of great life that I want to live for myself. And my end goal is to be able to retire my parents, and there's a lot of real big benefits from that. So think about your why. Understand, why do you want to do this in the first place? Who do you want to help, and who do you want to be spending your time with and serving? And then really look at yourself and say, am I in a comfortable place, and is that why I'm not taking action?